I started my recap of episode 305 pointing out the recurring theme of people not turning out to be who we thought they were. And episode 6 of Foundation's high-octane third season continues that trend. I counted 3 major, if not earth-shattering reveals, including Demerzel being involved with the creation of Psychohistory, Harry having no idea that the Mule was the current crisis, and the real reason Brother Dude wanted to get out of the Imperial Palace was so that he could finally go shopping and pick out his clothes for himself. Of course, the real reveal there is Song not turning out to be who he thought she was. But I did so enjoy seeing that even though the genetic drift may have influenced their individual tastes, the Dawn and Day exponents both having a penchant for disguises shows that at their core, they're still the same man. Now I'm secretly hoping that before his ascension ceremony as Brother Darkness, we get to see how Dusk does disguises and he tries to escape. For real though, Day's Mycogenian ensemble is my favorite costuming of the entire season, so I should probably just start there. After donning a pair of what I guess you'd call wraparound glasses and a knit bucket hat, the 24th tries to blend in on the streets of Mycogen. While he's taking a look around, he hears about his fleet being destroyed above Calgon and remarks to a street vendor that it's worse than she knows. She has an interesting look to her, perhaps not as conventionally attractive as Song, and I couldn't tell if she was tattooed or had some kind of Mycogen skin condition that could be part of the world building. She offers him a sweet from the micro farms, explaining that they all taste different, which can be a problem since sometimes you get one that tastes better than anything and then you can't have it again. He picks up a box after sampling it, and we see the spark that this particular day has for a specific courtesan from Gossamer Court return, kind of erasing the end of everything vibe he took on after hearing about the fleet. What she says about the candy ends up more fitting for his situation than he knows, because when he makes it to Song's apartment, things don't go as planned. We knew that she had her memory wiped, so there's a fun bit where, knowing that he has her memories with him, he tries to feel out if there are any latent feelings that spill over into this person he had a connection with, who is shocked to see him show up at her front door. His super duper disguise doesn't stop her from realizing that he's Empire, but of their time together, she only remembers him picking her and then the trip home. As you'd imagine, she isn't sure what to make of it as he wanders around digging on her apartment, pointing out things like having a window is good, and I feel like they missed an opportunity here to have him point out a rug. I know they probably couldn't have him say that it really ties the room together, but the inference would have been enough for me. She wonders if this is part of the arrangement, that he follows up with all the lovers he takes after they have their memories wiped. He asks if she wondered why he extended her stay, and she figures the sex must have just been that good, and when it's obvious the feelings aren't bleeding through, he tells her he brought her memories. Because she asked him to and looked at him like someone who might do her a kindness, so he threw out all the rules and he's here. This puts her in a spot where she has to walk a fine line because of who he is, which both performances make a lot of fun to watch, but when he tries to insist that she just put on the device because it'll make her see they were in love, she has to push back. For her, it was a business arrangement, saying she's sure he's wrong about her feelings, and that sets him off. Seeing that he overstepped, he tries to dial it back and shift the focus to the miracle she experienced as a follower of the inheritance, telling her that she met a robot. He thinks that would be enough, and he continues his pleas, but they're mostly falling on deaf ears because she's already called her life mate, who shows up with one of those stun gun things he avoided by sending the decoy in the last episode, and he finds out that their time together wasn't exactly what he thought it was. Her partner, Ocean Glass, brings up the first trying to wipe their people out, so they haven't forgotten, but we'll have to wait until the next episode to see what they do with him. He has Demerzel's tool, but other than that, it feels like he's on his own in a fairly hostile situation. Gail also got a big surprise when Demerzel showed up on the beggars at the end of the last episode, and we pick up with that right where it left off. If she wasn't already hostile from having to chase Dawn down only to find out his nanites stopped transmitting his vitals shortly before she got there. Gail's implying she's a bad parent pushes her over the edge. She shows real emotion here and makes it plain that she will be finding out why 25 died for Gail or because of her. This shot of her choking Gail against the wall was in the trailer, and it's been something I've been waiting to see since that came out. Things escalated until Gail took a couple of shots at her. Demerzel dodges the first, and then her face gets grazed by the second. That only slows her down a little, and then the choking happens. Demerzel is surprised that Harry never told her that she was a robot, and we see her pause for a second until her skin starts to heal itself, and then she tells her she'll be getting her answers, including why she shouldn't end her life this instant, and it's badass. There are two big surprises here. The first is what I hinted at in the beginning. She helped Harry create Psychohistory by giving him access to her memories to complete his data set. She says he convinced her that the formation of the Foundation and the preservation of Empire were not mutually exclusive goals, at least not in the short term, which I suppose makes her telling Varellis the same thing more understandable, or at least that's their intention. Her contribution to Psychohistory is something Asimov added to the prequels after the fact, and one of the spoilers I left out of my Demerzel video, so book readers won't be too surprised by that. The second thing jumped out at me more. That was her saying that Harry knew she was a robot from the beginning, and this is the critical part, that she doesn't know how. Gail sees a potential way out in Demerzel working with Harry. As she tries to explain that she is his plan, Demerzel puts it together that the second Foundation has been what was causing the shadows in the math she'd been noticing in the Prime Radiant. Gail explains how the second Foundation's different, and when she brings up their mentalic abilities, Demerzel asks about the Mule. That leads to more Demerzel getting caught up on the situation, and most importantly, coming to understand that Gail and the Mule are outliers that screw up the math. Gail also tells her that she can project her consciousness forward in time, and when Demerzel says that isn't possible, she explains she experiences time like the spacers, not literally, but as a shape. This connects back to her staying awake during her first jump on the way to Trantor, and she describes seeing her life as a line and then as a plane that she wrapped around herself like a blanket, realizing it was a shape she could manipulate. Demerzel wants to see her vision of the Mule and thinks there's a way it can be done. In one of her previous capacities, she would interrogate human subjects, which made me think of the detective days and the cerebro analysis, but she tells Gail she can access her brain directly through filaments. When they're about to get started and Gail mentions she needs to feel like she's drowning, Demerzel deadpans that won't be a problem, and that is the best line of the episode. It works, and she's able to experience the vision firsthand, recognizing that it happens on Trantor in front of the Imperial Library. This is a big revelation that Gail doesn't think makes sense. When Demerzel asks if she's tried to go further into the period where everything looks like it ends, she says she tried, but there's nothing there. They go back in so Demerzel can see it for herself, and it's mostly black and dreamy. There's something that looks like an eclipse, but when Demerzel tries to touch the light, it causes her to suffer a system failure, which leads to a hard reboot that creates a localized electromagnetic pulse and shuts everything down. Gail's heart also stopped beating, so Demerzel has to act fast and shock it to bring her back, and it all wasn't for nothing as she initially thinks. Demerzel picked up on a sound that humans can't hear, an infrasonic signature from the gravitational waves emanating from a black hole. And 4 months from now, they expect Gail will be orbiting the ergosphere of one of those. I would point out that this isn't the first time we heard that term this season, but I think black hole is enough to make this feel connected to the Novacula one way or another for everyone. While the visions are concerning, Demerzel can't really be sure that they're real. They could just as easily be hallucinations. In either way, she would need to be sure that helping Gail won't harm the dynasty. So she will let her live, but that's it for now. To rewind a bit, the opening shot of the episode is the Mule waking up from a nightmare. This scene appears to be a partial redo of Season 2's closing shot to replace the actor and establish where it fits in the timeline. Otherwise, it doesn't provide any new information other than confirming that he found out who Gail was when he looked into Pritchard's mind. He knows she's in their time and says he has to destroy her, even if he has to burn everything to do it. We'll find out later that he's on his way to New Terminus, as are the Mallows and Magnifico. The Balladeer is worried that the Foundation might take him away from Beta, who reassures him he has nothing to worry about, saying that they're good at making people love them. It looks like they're in for another rough welcome until they drop Captain Han's name, which seems to open the door, but it turns out to be the door to his cell, and they don't go in as visitors. The plan is to lock them all up together. There's still bad blood between Randu and Pritch over what happened on Haven, and getting Torin and Beta involved on Calgon. They get into it, and after that gets broken up, you realize that no one in the room is happy to see each other. There's enough tension to go around, but it's all leading to the reveal of their secret weapon, Maggie's playing, which Beta and Randu discussed in the last episode. When he finds out that the busy sonar is on New Terminus, Han asks him if he'd work against the Mule, and he isn't against it. Ember comes to get Magnifico, and the clown gets him to bring everyone else along except for Pritcher, who remains isolated in the cell. The clock is ticking because, as we see from a great shot of Ebling waiting outside the vault, the eclipse is imminent, which means Harry's going to make his first appearance since the last crisis. In the mayor's office, Randu airs the traitor's grievances. Ember isn't receptive, and he points out that Magnifico is valuable, but then throws out the idea of returning him to the Mule. They continue to go back and forth, and then Torin warns that the Mule is coming for the Foundation, whether it can come to terms with the traitors or not, and that when Harry appears, he might end up talking about the choices they make in this moment, which is a reminder that they think Psychohistory will have predicted all of this ahead of time. Then Beta suggests they just listen to Magnifico play, and the mayor agrees to bring all his top people in to do that. They listen and they experience the music's power, and as it worked its way into their hearts, the eclipse started. Everyone in the room started to realize how the Mule used it to take over Calgon, and that he might be vulnerable without it. They're all visibly moved, and by the time he was done playing, the Traitors Alliance and Foundation proper were ready to work together to defeat their common enemy. They feel ready to solve the crisis, but they're still looking towards Harry's guidance, and Beta says she'd like to meet this Seldon fellow everyone's always banging on about. So they head to the vault. On his way, Ember stops to see Han, trying to figure out where he went during all the missing time after he stole his ship. He doesn't know for sure about Ignis, but it reinforces his suspicions that Pritcher is working for someone else. He says he only works for the Seldon plan, which isn't technically a lie. After Ember leaves him there, everyone else converges on the vault for a recreation of one of the best reveals in the original Foundation trilogy. In that, Harry isn't this digital consciousness that can interact with people. He died of old age in the book, so one of the last things he did after setting his plan into motion was to record a series of holographic messages laying out the future crises. They were placed in what was called the Time Vault in the books, which was nothing like the show's version, and set to trigger at specific times based on his calculations. Essentially, the crisis would happen, and then the vault would open up and they would watch the recording he made all that time ago describing what the crisis was and how they solved it. It wasn't just a cool trick, but a way to reaffirm belief in a plan that required the followers not to know what it predicted for it to work. The side effect of that was that people started to believe it, that the plan would account for everything. At this point in its development, the Foundation had become complacent as it gathered power. The show has shown the same thing throughout this season, with Ebling telling Harry about it directly when they met earlier in the season. It's also condensed the order of the Seldon crises so that the Mule is the third crisis, compared to the fifth in the books. In those, the complacency and diminishing returns from the holo messages from Harry telling them, "Good job, you figured out the crisis yourselves as I predicted," led to them not even showing up at the vault for the scheduled appearances. In both cases, you can see how their belief in psychohistory, combined with their required ignorance about what was coming, sets them up to be entirely caught off guard when the Mule appears. In the books, Ebling spends his time figuring out when the simulacrum of Harry will appear. And in the show, he figures out how to null the null field to talk to him. Everything else that's going on is pretty similar. And in the books, everyone, including the reader, is shocked when the recording of Harry has no idea that the mule is the crisis. We see this play out in the show, where digital Dr. Seldon's ability to interact not only creates a funny moment when he disses Mayor Ember, but also adds gravity to his having no idea who the mule is. The result is pretty much the same, only here the mule has timed his invasion of New Terminus to coincide with Harry's appearance. He makes a virtual appearance of his own, reframing the question from who is the mule to where is the mule, and the answer is that he's on their doorstep. Again, we see the Foundation ships firing on each other, doing his work for him, and he puts Dr. Seldon on the spot, asking if this was part of his plan. Ebbling and everyone else in the vault look to Harry to help them, and he just stands there looking befuddled before he disappears. To really put an exclamation point at the end of the sentence, he activates the null field so everyone has to flee, with all the main characters making it out alive, with the whole planet becoming a battlefield around them. Ember has another chance to come off as a real weasel when he doesn't let Ebbling into his ground car after Magnifico trips and falls, and we see Beta collapse before she can clear the null field, and Torrin has to carry her when she doesn't regain consciousness. Now it's her who has the dizzies, I guess. On the Beggar, as Demerzel's getting ready to leave, she starts noticing a high volume of transmissions. She and Gail realize New Terminus will likely fall, and if it does, the mule will gain access to their Whisper fleet and could be on Trantor's doorstep before they know it. It looks like there's been a complete shift in the balance of power. Gail's idea of using Foundation's resources to box the mule in after he took Trantor is entirely out of the question. Demerzel is going home, where she has a brother Dusk teetering on the brink of early onset senility, sitting on a secret planet killing weapon. At the same time, Dawn is dead or MIA, and Day is basically in the custody of robot worshipping fanatics in the bowels of the capital's lower levels. The closing shot is of the vault going dark and hovering there dormant like it had for the past century and a half, with Harry presumably inside, knowing that the mule being a true outlier means the plan is off the rails. As far as how it all went down, I think you're supposed to be wondering how the mule was able to pull this off. A lot of this does line up with how the crisis unfolded in the book, but the show added Magnifico's playing being the thing that got the two Foundation factions to work together. He did play on Terminus, but the circumstances were different. The traitors were on the brink of starting a civil war, which was the crisis Psychohistory predicted, but they scrapped their plans as the mule started taking more Foundation territories after the fall of Calgon. So the mule didn't pop up above the vault to take over the planet as we see here. Still, the show chose to have Gail say in the voiceover that everyone recognized how the mule's powers can be amplified with the busy sonar in his possession, but without it, he's vulnerable. He doesn't look that vulnerable at the end of the episode. He looks like he's about to roll over the rest of the galaxy, and the show wants you to wonder why that's the case. It's not like the Foundation let Magnifico in and let him play and then all turned on each other and handed over the planet to the mule. It's hard to say exactly what happened or what will happen next, but both Foundations and Empire are all on their back feet, and I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.